All right, welcome to Ivory GC. Today we have the pleasure of hosting Charlie Kwalwasser, a seasoned legal expert and extensive experience in financial services and real estate, now serving as general counsel at Camp, the family experience store. In this episode, we'll explore his journey, insights on leadership and the legal aspects of retail, entertainment, and immersive experiences, and advice for aspiring legal professionals. Charlie, welcome to Ivory GC. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Let me start with what you're up to. What's your current role and what's the company you're working for, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So the easiest way to explain Camp to many is it's a combination of a retail store and an entertainment zone. We have merchandise mostly for kids that are under the age of 10. And then we have ticketed admission shows that are most commonly based on licensed IP. We have several Disney titles. We have a Paw Patrol license. Our most popular show right now is Bluey, the property owned by BBC. We have several additional that will be coming online later this year. We also have crafting activities in our stores and various other special moments. We do meet and greets with known characters. So, you know, we're most known as an experiential retailer.
Yeah.
So that's a term that people like to use, but I'd say that we're truly an experience plus retail.
Yeah, got it. And so you've been with Camp since November of 2018, and you've held a few different positions there. Can you kind of walk through what you've done with Camp?
Yeah, so I came here at the very beginning of the company. I came over from another place where I was working. So I officially started in November, but I informally started in October. I worked for about a month for free. And the reason I came over is because this company was started by a founder of a prior company where I was general counsel. So when he was starting this, he reached out to me. When I joined the company, I wore a lot of different hats. I was, the informal CFO initially. I handled all of the real estate, new stores, all aspects of that, the deal making, site identification, deal making, as well as the build out, which I still do. And then I also was running the legal function, which I still do. So pretty much all that except for the finance stuff. We have a whole finance department now.
Yeah.
Of people that know how to do that way better than me.
Yeah. How big is the company today in terms of employee size?
So most of our employees are at the retail store level.
Okay.
Each store is about 30-ish employees,
Okay.
mostly hourly. We have about, I would say a collection of store leaders that are salaried. So when you include all of those folks, we're somewhere around 350, I think.
Yeah. Okay. And then on a corporate level, do you know kind of how many?
Much smaller. It's
yeah.
more like it's been fluctuating recently, but it's more like 30 to 40. I would say closer to 40 right now.
And then the legal team are you solo or do you have others on your team with you?
Yeah. I mean, our legal department is like a third of a person because it's me, but then I do many other things. So no one else on my team. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about your prior experiences? So you mentioned that the founder of Camp brought you on in the early days. Talk about where you were before Camp, and then let's go back as far as you'd like. I know you had a pretty interesting experience at Lehman Brothers. So whatever you'd like to share, let's start exploring some of your experience.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll take it back to the very beginning. So when I got out of law school, I worked at a big law firm, Clifford. They're based in the UK. They had a big office in New York. Right when I joined, they acquired a law firm in New York called Rogers and Wells. Some may still remember the name. That had a very big IP department. I came into the law firm as a patent lawyer. I handled patent prosecution and litigation. And while I was there, that expanded. I ended up doing trademark work, a lot of licensing work, and a little bit of corporate transactions. We did some M&A work.
Mm-hmm.
all IP focused. And when I was there, the focus of my patent prosecution work were financial services clients. At the time, we did a lot of work for three of the big banks, and this was this was back when software and financial product patents were pretty popular. The banks were developing these defensive portfolios. So Lehman Brothers ended up looking to hire someone, and I was fortunate to get that job. And then I went over there with my the initial project I had was to build their patent program and their portfolio. So I would say that was probably the strict focus of what I was doing there for the first couple of years. I
Yeah.
ended up with their entire trademark portfolio as well, which was quite big, as is in financial services. And then by the end, I was doing a very, very broad scope of work. We had a big data licensing business, so I was supporting that. And then Lehman Brothers was also a very active acquirer and seller of companies. So I would be the IP support on those deals,
Mm-hmm.
as well as when they went bankrupt and sold their assets to other buyers. I did those deals, and I ended up going to Barclays, where I worked for another 2.5 years, doing pretty much a similar role.
Yeah.
And that's when I left for camp. I was looking to move out of financial services at that time, and actually was focused on going to a tech company. And I did the whole interview process with the various big ones who are on the West Coast, who actually now have large East Coast presences. But at that time, it would have meant moving to the West. And during that process, I saw this opportunity pop up with this company called Quirky. It was a consumer service business, was a startup that was pretty well funded. And the best way to describe what they did was crowdfunding model. They community sourced inventions, so they needed someone in a GC position that had a really strong patent background. So I was
Mm-hmm.
unusually qualified, and I just hit it off with the people there and got that job. And that's when I moved into more of this general counsel type of capacity
Yeah.
at venture-backed companies. So I was at Quirky for pretty much till the end. Unfortunately, that company went bankrupt also. And I was there for about a year doing their bankruptcy process. We did a Chapter 11 and had two operating businesses that we sold through that process. So it took a fair amount of time.
Yeah.
And then when that finished, I moved into a GC role at a company that's now public. It's called Bark or BarkBox. Most people know them by.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there. I was there for a few years. Uh, um, I was there probably up until the beginning of the IPO preparation process, which is when the founder from Quirky, who was starting camp, reached out to me, and I moved over to camp. So now I've
Got
been
it.
here almost 7 years.
Yeah. And so you've held positions with titles as Chief Commercial Officer, General Counsel, and Corporate Secretary, and most recently at Camp, Chief Administrative Officer. You're also Chief Administrative Officer at Quirky. Tell us a little bit about the progression of those roles, kind of how one led to the next, and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis as Chief Administrative Officer at Camp.
Yeah. So the nature of that role at Quirky was very different. That was something that happened in the process of preparing to go bankrupt. You know, we kind of offloaded a bunch of executives, so it was basically me and the CFO. So I was just kind of doing everything that he wasn't.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's much more traditional. You know, I've had an evolution of roles here. I'd say, you know, the and titles as well. The chief administrative officer title probably is the most fitting for what I do here. You know, in addition to the legal work, I'm also and also, you know, it's interesting as we talk about this. This is a lot of what GCs do anyway. You know, I'm sit above all the process for documentation. making sure that, things are done in a way that are scalable and trackable, really with an eye more to proper risk mitigation.
Yeah.
And I'm also always just reviewing, I would say, business decisions that we're making for sensibility. I'm part of that process. Um, it's hard to like distinguish what a chief administrative officer does from a general counsel.
Yeah.
I can do the converse, where a chief administrative officer strictly doesn't do all the legal work. But I
Yeah.
think that, many broad-based general counsels kind of do both. Um,
Hmm.
I think the reason why I have that title here is because I do so many things that aren't legal. Like I run our whole real estate function. So I sit atop a lot of folks that have nothing to do with legal, like
Hmm.
construction professionals. I'm involved in the design process, at least like managing it.
Uh-huh.
And then we have a whole part of our business that is, the best way to describe it is production. But when we put these shows in our stores, there's a whole process to building them, designing them, moving them in and out. So there's a lot that goes into to running that as well.
And so you've moved into almost as much of a business, or maybe even more of a business role and a legal role. How is that? Has that evolved over time naturally? And is that something that you've gravitated towards? What's been that kind of evolution of purely legal role to more of a mixed legal business role?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a natural evolution. I feel like if, as an in-house lawyer, um, you're always focused on, you know, optimizing outcomes.
Yeah.
So obviously, your primary role is making sure that legal issues are addressed properly, but nothing happens in a vacuum. So I think, you're part legal expert, but you're also part, how do I achieve the best balanced outcome here with, minimizing risk but maximizing potential outcome.
Yeah.
So I think I've always been thinking about what's happening, big picture. So like, when I was at Lehman Brothers, the role that I had there just had this natural hybrid nature to it because we were doing a lot of licensing of our technology. And then we were also very focused on these defensive strategies.
Yeah.
Um, when I came here, like it was strictly a hybrid function. When I walked in the door, it wasn't accidental. I mean, I did a lot of non-legal things.
Yeah.
So I think it's always come naturally to me. I think another thing you find when you're a GC in these smaller companies is you have like real time information constantly. So you can't
Yeah.
help but know where all of your decisions fit contextually because you could be the best lawyer ever, and if the company doesn't make sense, it doesn't matter. So it's really comes down to, is the business working correctly?
Yeah, and you mentioned your experiences at your experience at Lehman Brothers. Talk a little bit about how that, going through their bankruptcy process and how that shaped your career and gave you maybe a different perspective than you had going into the job.
Yeah, I mean, I was along for the ride in the bankruptcy process there. I mean, I worked on the deal, focused on what I was responsible for, and then I mean, I was bizarrely I ended up collecting signatures on these deal documents from Barclays people. Like it was literally happening on the executive floor of Lehman Brothers as the Lehman people were moving out, the Barclays people were moving in. So that was a really weird experience. But I would say, I would say it just sounds silly, but the way that shaped my career is that I'm not there anymore. Because I think like if that company didn't fail, I probably, it was a great place to work. I probably would have
Yeah,
stayed.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and it forced me to, think about new things and doing different things in different places. I don't think I really ever envisioned myself anywhere other than financial services prior to that company going under, because I grew up in New York. My dad worked in financial services, which is kind of like, it was what you do or want to do.
Yeah. Where did you pick up your real estate experience?
Just done stuff personally, was
Yeah.
probably the biggest part. The best way to learn these things is to do them. And I always had an interest in building things like physical structures. I did civil engineering in college. I actually
Okay.
wanted to do architecture school, and my dad talked me out of it. So ended up doing civil engineering, and to be brutally honest, the reason why I didn't stay in that when I graduated is because you didn't get paid enough. So, I was like, where can I increase my capacity, but
Uh,
not like stick myself in a place. So, law was a good opportunity. It gives you a lot of different skill sets, even if you don't, stay in a law firm or stay in a legal role your whole career. So it was. I'm glad I did it. But
yeah.
that's why I made that step. And now, strangely, I'm, I'm back where I would have been if I'd never changed.
Well, where did you focus when you were in patent prosecution? What were you doing, more of the engineering piece, or talk about what your practice looked like when you were, starting out as a patent lawyer?
Yeah, it was software and business method patents,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
like
Okay.
strictly. I did a little bit of like mechanical aerospace stuff. We had one of our clients was a big airplane company.
Okay.
Um, but I would say 95% of the patent prosecution work I did was for financial services and software companies.
Got it. Got it. And you talked about in your current role using or making processes internally scalable and trackable. What tools or processes have you implemented to be successful in that regard?
Yeah, so a lot of this, I think, depends on the structure and the size of the company. So for us, since I would say it's a rather simple business and everything kind of goes through me, like the process for getting stuff signed and getting stuff, tracked is very simple. Like I'm the single point of contact. We have everything on a shared storage system, so people can search based on the access that they're allowed to have.
Yeah.
But we're not really at the point where we need something super complex. I mean, I've
Yeah.
been at places where we have, those big contract management, like life cycle management systems. We just don't need something like that. Like, it
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
overkill.
Yeah.
Um, I would say, like generally speaking, it's important to create a process that is very easy to transfer to someone if you leave.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's very simple. As long as someone has access, that like the admin access for me, they can get everything at any time and do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And then also, like, it's not cumbersome for the business people to
Yeah.
work within this process.
Yeah.
Um, like that's important too, because if you make it cumbersome, then they typically like avoid it.
Yeah. And that, I've in a couple of my positions, I've evaluated contract lifecycle management platforms, and that was always the hang up for me was you had one, they're fairly expensive, two, require fairly extensive implementation, and you've got to train the business folks on them, and they've got to learn a new tool that may not be intuitive to their business processes. So to the extent that a CLM can integrate with a Salesforce or another native tool that the business team is already using, that certainly helps. When you transitioned from financial services to more of a technology company environment, what were some of the biggest adjustments you had to make in terms of mindset, responsibilities, and pace of work?
Um, So like practical things, and I don't know that it so much has to do with the industry other than just the nature of the companies. When I went to Quirky, I would like, this was like how long ago? Almost 15 years ago. I was the oldest person in the company. Like, like everyone
Yeah.
was, kids like right out of college.
Yeah.
So just understanding the mindset and what motivates folks and what they care about, because I think that's very important from a legal perspective. Like if you can't, especially in-house, if you can't gel with the folks, like you're going to be useless. Like you're just not going to be able to do
Yeah.
your job.
Yeah.
So just understanding how to meet them where they're at. And and this is not an age thing, but like, software engineers, like they're a unique bunch of folks, right? Like finance is easy. Like, what's most important to them? Like money. Like very, very like all they cared about was like as long as they were going to get as much money as they could get, like it was fine. And so everything you had to do to motivate them, you had to talk around like, how does the get the deal, whatever. Software folks, especially at a certain point in time, like this whole topic around open source, like they didn't like the idea of the company owning what they were doing. This
Uh-huh.
whole concept of, well, I'm building this thing and then I can't use it somewhere else,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like it's based on open source, but then we're not going to share it back. So figuring out how to navigate that, especially as an IP lawyer,
Yeah.
I think was an interesting process.
What were some of the strategies you used to address that particular issue with software engineers and proprietary rights over the technology they were developing while they were employed?
Well, I mean, part of it is just figuring out really what matters to the company, because
Yeah.
sometimes like it doesn't matter. We're happy to share it,
Yeah.
and sometimes it does. So being deliberate as to picking and choosing where it was important instead of just being lazy and saying like we need to all own it because I don't want to go through the process of trying to distinguish things.
Yeah.
Um, and then in the situation where it did need to be ownable, I think collaborating, helping them understand why and how can we, do this in such a way that it's acceptable to everyone as it can be. But at a certain point in time, you can't deny the reality of the situation. We're all here getting paid because
Yeah.
someone made an investment,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like there's a certain level of proprietary technology that the company needs to control.
Yeah. So, what are some of the most pressing legal challenges for camp in the experiential retail space, and how are you preparing to address them?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what I use my legal brain on here is probably not as interesting as those questions. It's more around like we have a very complex investment structure in our company because of the,
Okay.
the changes that have taken place over time. So constantly trying to optimize that for our situation. And just there's a lot of different parties involved that got involved at certain times, and everyone needs to be happy, especially if you want to change things. So I think that's complex. I'm sorry to be obtuse. I just can't get into like super
Yeah.
details.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd say that's been a big focus of my legal time over the past few years.
Mhm.
As far as just like general like commercial legal concepts, I think the business is pretty simple. We don't have any unique privacy issues. Like we're U.S. based. We're direct to consumer, but we don't do anything super novel. I think probably the biggest thing I had to navigate is we have these spaces where kids are playing around, and people are going to get hurt. They're going to fall down and bang into things no matter what we do. So some places will have everyone sign a waiver on paper when you come in, which can be difficult sometimes operationally. So we
Mhm.
decided to make it part of the ticket purchase process. They agree online. It's click through the whole thing. You
Yeah.
know, not as perfect sometimes as people like getting the actual waiver and release when they're there, but you know, I think it's a balance.
Yeah.
And again, that none of that's groundbreaking. A lot of people do it that way, but I
Yeah.
think, you know, in the early days, that was a big decision we had to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have some complex IP licensing deals where we're the licensee,
Uh-huh.
just with bigger parties than us. So I think with those, it's the legal part is less challenging than the operational part because they make you agree to all of these operating requirements and helping the people here understand what they're signing up for and making sure they're figuring out ahead of time how they're going to deliver.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people just don't pay attention, even though you ask them like, you know, you're gonna have to do X, Y, and Z. Are you okay with this? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Right.
it's
Right.
like, did you do X, Y, and Z? What?
Do you
How am
have
I doing that?
any
Yeah.
platforms that you use in place for, to monitor contractual compliance or to try to encourage that type of thing? And it's a difficult aspect
We
because like
did.
you're saying, I mean,
Yeah. I mean, we track these things on the finance side,
yeah.
but, but, but beyond that, not, no, we don't. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it can be challenging. To your point, during negotiations, oh yes, we can do this, and then whether it gets done is can be a different
Yeah.
issue
Well, it
and a
gets
challenging one.
done. It gets
Yeah,
done. It's just,
yeah,
you know, it's people don't really realize what's involved until they actually have to do it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. So, who have been some of your key mentors throughout your career, and how have they influenced your leadership style?
you know, there was a senior associate when I was at Clifford Chance who's still a friend. Um, he ended up going in-house as a patent lawyer for a while, and now I think he runs his own company. So his name is Joe. And then I've had a couple bosses in-house. I think each of them kind of brought their different little flair to influence me.
Yeah,
Both lawyers. One was a litigator. One was like a transactional lawyer. And then the founder of Quirky, and then as well as Camp, probably him as well. His name's Ben Kaufman. I think, you know, everyone's got their own little way they influence you. I think probably what stuck with me about everyone is I have a very hands-off like management style.
yeah,
Like I'm very direct and specific, but I do not micromanage.
yeah,
Like I'm very light touch.
yeah.
So I think that's something I've learned. Like everyone I've just rattled off was that way. Um, so probably that. Um, and then I mean, again, I don't know if this is because of how I was mentored or how I grew up, but I'm definitely a straight shooter. Like I'm not afraid to be direct and to the point about something, or you know, I'm not afraid of difficult conversations.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'd rather like, you know, say something and be direct and give someone a chance to fix it than to just kind of try to avoid it until it's a big problem.
How do you think that served you well in your career?
I mean, I think that I think that it's better that I have that approach because otherwise I think I would have been in difficult situations just because I don't really like I don't have a lot of patience, you know, like when it's not working, like I
Yeah,
can't just tolerate it. So it
yeah,
would have blown
yeah,
up. So I
yeah,
think, you know, I just like I don't like to sit on things, you know.
yeah, yeah,
So but I
yeah.
think it might be more of a personality thing than a mentoring thing.
Right, right, right. Well, looking ahead, what are some of the key trends or developments that you believe will shape the legal profession in the retail and entertainment sectors in the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's probably not a surprising answer. Artificial intelligence is
Yeah,
gonna change a lot of these processes. I'm a little concerned just because it's not gonna be perfect immediately, and younger folks, I think, will get too reliant on it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
the way it works is if the same mistake is made too many times, it becomes like a real thing, not a mistake.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
afraid these tools will teach themselves incorrectly.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've seen that. The primarily junior attorneys relying perhaps too much on artificial intelligence and not developing some of the skills that come with doing the manual review of contracts in particular. And so it seems to be a bit of a double-edged sword, the AI tools that you can use that can make things a little bit more efficient, but can also kind of short circuit the training and development that you like to see among junior attorneys. Speaking of junior attorneys, if you had one piece of advice that you'd give someone rising in their career and who aspires to be where you are today, what would you tell them?
I mean, I would say to, everyone doesn't have the luxury of this, but to the extent possible, to be honest with yourself. Like if you're in a
Yeah.
job that's not doing it for you, the long the you can't fight gravity, right? The longer it goes on, the bigger the unwind's going to be for you.
Yeah.
So, you should try to, again, you can't have it 100% the way you want it, but to be in touch with yourself and constantly think about, things you can do to get closer to what is, I would say, the most satisfying for you, even if it means doing things on the side.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think about my job evolution over time. For the most part, like each job I move to is like more fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it has, not to say that like, it's like, all games. And there's trade-offs. This is the third small company I've worked for. And it can be very stressful at times. Like there's times where, you don't know if it's going to exist, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I do like my day to day a lot.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you for taking the time to share your experience and your background. Wish you all the best with the future of camp and your career, and let's stay in touch.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.